think when it comes to me. Testing. My name is Spidey, and this is my last transmission to the whole world during the zombie apocalypse. Oh shit. I would just like my final words to be these: George A. Romero no longer knows how to make a movie. Diary of the Dead is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Land of the Dead was a complete waste. And Survival of the Dead is going to really, really blow. And Left 4 Dead 2 is just a shitty game that doesn't classify as a sequel. Let this be known as my final words. And what's up with the YouTube beta? I mean, it completely sucks. You know what I mean? Like, huh? This thing was never fucking plugged. Oh shit. Yeah, ooh.
Ken smiled and sat up. Well, we'd be delighted to help in any way we can, Mr. Collier. Any way at all.
Thank you. I know my brother purchased the property through you, and, well, I imagine you're reasonably well acquainted with the place.
Oh, yes, very well acquainted, Mr. Collier.
Very good. Then I imagine you'd be the best qualified estate agent in the area to sell it on again.
Oh, we'd be delighted, sir. Ken winked at Jim. I believe we still have the property on file somewhere in our database. I'm sure we can make everything go very smoothly for you, especially at such a difficult time. Jim frowned.
Thank you, Mr. Chase. I'll arrange with my brother's solicitor to have the keys dropped around to your office later today or tomorrow. I'd be grateful if you could pop out to the place in person sometime to check it over. Naturally, we'd like to get it on the market as soon as possible.
Of course, Mr. Collier, said Ken. I'll get out there just as soon as I get the key.
That's very kind of you. Well, I'll no doubt see you shortly.
Of course, sir. And once again, my deepest sympathies to you and your family.
Thank you, Mr. Chase. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Mr. Collier. Ken lowered the receiver back onto its cradle and looked up at Jim and Lindsay, who were both watching him in silence. Well, how about that then, boys and girls? What? Said Lindsay. Ken nodded at Jim. Remember what we were saying about Poachers Cottage coming back onto our books again within a year? Oh no, Ken, said Jim, almost in a whisper. A smile rose onto Ken's face, spreading out as it always did when he scented imminent and considerable profit. Oh yes, Jim. Oh yes. The next morning, Ken opened the door to the office and bent down to pick up the post. Besides the usual assortment of mail and circulars, there was a plain, unmarked white envelope. Ken separated it from the rest of the mail. It held something small and flat. He smoothed the envelope between his finger and thumb and smiled as he felt the unmistakable shape of a key. It had to be Collier's, most likely dropped off by his solicitor sometime yesterday evening. Ken considered his schedule for the day ahead. He should be able to get out to the cottage later on today. It'd be interesting to see what the Colliers had done to it over the past year, before they... The thought stalled in his mind. He cleared his throat and looked out of the window at the high street that was gradually coming to life outside. Then he found himself humming an amorphous melody that gradually became This Old House. Shakin' Stevens danced into the centre of his mind, replacing the coldness that had been uncoiling there a moment before. He looked at his watch. "Yes, just after lunch should be a good time for that little visit," he said, and tossed the mail onto his desk. Then he picked up his mug from beside his keyboard. It still held some dregs of tea and biscuits from yesterday. He swirled them around and started whistling This Old House as he went off in the direction of the kitchen to put the kettle on. At just after 2 p.m., the stillness of the afternoon outside Poachers Cottage began to resonate with the distant bass line of Level 42's Lessons in Love. The song grew louder, slowly smothering the bird song and the chirruping of grasshoppers, as the Range Rover that bore the blaring 80s compilation drew nearer. It finally drew up outside, slowing down and easing onto the grass verge in front of the cottage. Ken took off his sunglasses and looked out of the open driver's window at his now reacquired cash cow. He smiled, switched off the engine, and got out. The peacefulness of the cottage's setting struck him immediately. The sounds of nature, strange to his urban ears, ebbed through the shimmering summer haze. He took a few steps back, allowing himself a good view of the property. In their short tenure, the Colliers had evidently been very busy out here. Even at a glance, Ken could see that the place had been much improved. The hedge, which last year had been growing out of control, was now cut back and squared off at chest height, making it possible to see the front garden. Last year, this too had been overgrown, and he'd had to make excuses to people who came to view the house, saying it was a wild garden. But now there'd be no need for any excuses. The mowed lawn and newly dug flower beds spoke for themselves. Ken pushed open the little wooden gate and started down the path. He looked at the flower beds and imagined the Colliers tending them, wiping the sweat from their brows, then stopping for tea or maybe a glass of lemonade. He could see them smiling at their work, loving their home. It wasn't an image that sat comfortably with their later suicide pact. Ken shook his head and fished the key from his pocket. The front door shone with a recent coat of red paint, and next to it, at eye level, a little hand-painted sign had been fixed that read, Poachers Cottage. The skin on the back of Ken's neck prickled. He didn't like the sign, even though there was nothing tacky or offensive about it. Then he realized that it wasn't the sign that was making him feel uncomfortable, but the name itself. The sign would lead to questions that he had no desire to answer. They should rename the place and bury its gruesome past once and for all. He made a mental note to have the sign removed, pushed the key into the lock, and opened the door. Inside, he was again struck by the amount of work the Colliers had done. All the old hall carpeting had been torn up, and the floorboards fully restored. The walls of the hall had been painted white, and pictures of the Colliers and other people, presumably family and friends, now hung at regular intervals along its length. Ken looked at one of the pictures of the couple smiling out from one of the prints. It was a strange business, all right. You never knew what fate might have in store around the corner. He wandered through into the kitchen and looked at the cooker. Its door was, of course, closed. Just a clean, white kitchen appliance, waiting to be used. Again, Ken felt the skin at the back of his neck prickle, and he turned to look out of the window into the back garden. Like the front garden, it had been lovingly tended, and the blossoms of myriad flowers now blazed in the sunshine. He glanced back at the cooker and sniffed. Could he smell gas, or was that just his imagination? Suddenly, from upstairs, came the sound of a door slamming shut. Ken jerked around towards the hall behind him. "Hello?" Nothing stirred but the motes of dust drifting through the sunlight. It had to be a window open upstairs. Probably left that way to keep the place aired by... He wanted to finish by an estate agent, but realized he couldn't. But it had to be an open window, and his opening of the front door had created a draft.